You're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio, Bridgeport. You know that the Q is Bridgeport, right? I think was the last thing I asked you.
I know.
Bridgeport. 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 All right. I think we should just say that it's April 12th, 2018, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. It's because I'm not sitting in this seat. So now you're going to have to hum, Matt, the opening song. Sing it.
Sorry, Chris. I don't know.
It's okay. All right, let me get in the right mindset.
Playing. I have it.
Yeah, I see.
But that means that we can't hear Kate, too, either when she comes in.
Kate, can we hear you? Say something, Kate.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll work to get Kate on, too. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris. We'll play some music later.
Yeah, we'll play some music and get things going. So can we play any music right now?
Nope. You're just going to have to start the show without any music.
Okay. All right. Well, hello and welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. That is a first. That is the most smooth opening we've ever had. So if you're listening for the first time, you're in luck because this is as good as it gets. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you once again from the Co-Prosperity Sphere here in Bridgeport, Chicago. Thanks again to Lumpen Radio for having us on, and Logan Bay, its fearless leader, and Jamie Trecker, its also fearless leader, who hopefully will be coming in here soon to make sure things are going right. For those of you listening on 105.5 FM over the airwaves, thank you for doing so. I appreciate it. Or if you're listening via the Lumpen Radio app or TuneIn Radio, anything like that, if you are listening live, you should probably hop on over to tlk.io/WLPN to join in the live chat. I'm sure there's nothing at all to be said for what's going on right now there. Just a whole bunch of normal chatter and stuff like that. But I wanted to thank everyone who is listening live. Even if you're not listening live, I want to thank you very, very much. I want to thank Mr. Jamie Trecker very, very, very much as well for running down here, saving the day, leading fearlessly, maybe someone would say. But if you're listening via iTunes, I want to thank you as well, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. If you're listening for the first time, well, let me just say, also, thank you for some of the very nice reviews we've been getting lately. I appreciate it. I think a few episodes back, I complained that I hadn't read any good reviews lately. I went on a little bit later and realized that it was because I just hadn't looked, and there actually had been some reviews. So thanks, guys, for leaving those reviews. For those listening for the first time, let me tell you what the goal of this show is. It's to really, the goal of the show, and this is, I'm going to be honest here, if we're going to talk about goals, the goal of the show for me is to say the opening and have the music come in. It happens about 75% of the time.
That is definitely Chris's only goal.
Yeah, but aside from that, the goal of the show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer, getting into your glass, feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beers with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And
you want to be really professional now, Chris, and try the music now?
Let's see if you. I just want to see if you can do it. So there we go. I didn't say Bridgeport, but close enough. All right, that's it. There it is. All right.
I think we missed the window
never.
on that one.
Yeah,
it can be done. Yeah. That's good to know.
Yes, that is the music. So I wanted to quickly note that the opinions of everyone are not the opinions of, are just the opinions of the participants. They're our own individual opinions. They don't represent the opinions of any entity that these people may be associated with, or the opinions of Lumpen Radio or the Beer Temple. I mean, I think that was a great opening, for example. Me personally, the Beer Temple and Lumpen Radio thinks it was a terrible opening, but Chris Quinn, thinks it was a wonderful opening. So I want to thank Matt Arata, DJ Matt Arata, who's on the ones and twos, for that. And I'm telling you, it's because I'm sitting in this seat. I don't know.
That's true.
I'm very out of sorts when I'm sitting in this seat. I'm not in my normal spot, and I don't like it. But I want to get to my guests. So, now that you know whose opinions are whose, or whom,
or whose they're not.
I'll also mention it is boiling hot in Studio B here today.
Welcome to spring.
Yeah, move that little cover on the ground, that little piece of carpet. See if cold air comes out of there. There you go. So professional. So I want to introduce the guests. We introduce guests in order of seniority, that being how many times they've been on the show, not age or anything like that, net worth. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just care about how many times you've been on my show. So
how many times have we impacted your life directly within this span of time on a Thursday night?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
I get it.
Really, that's all there is to me, you know. I live my life one Thursday from 8 to 10 Central at a time, really. But first, definitely, number one on that list is you, Mr. Arata, DJ MA. What's up, dude? How are you?
Good. I'm.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that opening?
You know, it's a mistake.
Going?
It's a board configuration that I had not encountered before.
You know what I've heard about good craftsmen? They always blame their tools.
Yep.
Or, you know what, I'm not even a craftsman. I like to specifically never touch it. That way I can just blame everybody else when something goes wrong. So that's my little trick.
I was out and about today around Chicagoland, and nothing beer related, so it's very topical. But did a couple errands, spent some time at the Apple Store. The
new Apple Store.
No, the one that's been there forever in Lincoln Park.
Oh, okay.
And spent some time very briefly at the car dealership. You know.
So there's literally nothing beer related you're about to say. Okay. All right. Good. This is going well.
We're rolling, man.
Yeah. Is there anything
this is great.
beer related that is new with you?
Had some of the Firestone Walker current mix pack that has that experimental Winners EX1 beer or whatever in it, pale ale.
I never heard about that beer.
They did a contest for some folks and then sent them on a trip up the coast to visit all the breweries and stuff, and had them brew on the pilot system and canned up that beer.
Civilians? Like normal people?
Well, presumably some beer-interested people.
Or like a Sam Adams long shot type thing where it's like a homebrew competition.
I don't think that it was a homebrew competition.
Or like Mobcraft style where you show up and say, here, make this. And if everybody says, yeah, make that thing, then they make that thing.
I think that's something more along the lines of it. With the winners of whatever this contest was, got to kind of decide what went into the beer. And so that's interesting.
We're brewing a pork Hellas.
I was more interested to see it in the 12-pack because I thought that was kind of an ingenious way to get people to take it off their hands. Like nobody's really going to buy this because they don't know anything about it or anything. And
was the beer good?
Yeah, it tasted a lot like all their other beers, to be honest. But
which is pretty good.
Which is to say, not bad. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing to say. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for working the board.
It'll be totally smooth from here on out.
I think last thing I said to you before we went on was, are you sure you don't want Jamie to come down and set this up? Nope, I got it.
Well, we haven't seen that part yet either.
Yes. My next guest, well, thank you all the same. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My next guest is Mr. Carl Clockers.
Good evening.
How are you?
I just want to make sure that no one misses the irony of me being on to talk about a thing I wrote about bad beer podcasts.
Yeah.
On a night when we've had a marvelous rollout and seamless introduction.
Right.
We're doing great. This
I know.
is really going quite.
This
well.
might be one for the ages. I think.
No, put this on your sizzle reel.
The train wreck shows are always people's favorites. They like to hear me. They like just to imagine me kind of red faced and sweating with like nerves over like what the heck's going on. What's new with you, man? Just ran into you up the street.
That's right. Yeah, because before you go and do the Beer Temple podcast / radio broadcast, if you're not at Kimski, you're probably doing something wrong. We ran into each other there. I was enjoying a quick dinner. I managed to find some Bent River on draft, which I couldn't tell you the last time I saw on tap in Chicago. Bent River is, I want to say, somewhere downstate, or is it the Quad Cities?
Quad Cities, I
Quad
think.
Cities.
I think so.
And I've gotten in trouble for calling places west downstate, but again, I'm revealing my Chicagoland bias.
I said the same thing. I called Wild Onion down south one time, and people freaked out and looked on a map. I think it's like technically north.
Yeah, it's like Barrington, dude.
Yeah.
That one's not that far.
I mean,
but still, Bent River you don't see very much. And from what I understand, they actually do a decent amount of production. It just kind of like doesn't often make its way into Chicagoland. So, when I see something like that, and as someone who has reliably run a event at Craft Beer Week that is focused on downstate and out of Chicagoland, but still Illinois breweries, that kind of caught my eye. So ran with that one. They had a peach milkshake IPA,
yes.
and it was as promised. It was peachy. It was milkshakey. I got what I paid for.
Yeah. I got another Iowa beer. I got a Toppling Goliath. I played it a little bit safer, I would say. I really enjoyed mine. I'm pouring a beer here. I'm not going to say whose beer it is. It's a New England IPA we just happened to find here because I came directly from the airport. I haven't brought any beer with me. And my guests came through and also brought nothing. And
here to help, Chris.
Yeah.
Here to help.
And this beer has chunks in it. So much so that there are chunks of yeast that were sticking to the side of the glass.
If I didn't know better, I'm like 5 feet away from you right now, and if you told me that was a glitter beer, I would say, "Oh yeah, of course."
Look at the bottom.
That is.
Look at the bottom of that.
That is a sight to behold.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm guessing it was a.
They can't all be home runs.
Last or last of the tank type thing. Maybe that's why it was here.
Yeah, I'm sure it tastes great. But anyway,
yeah.
Other than that, yeah, I feel like we kind of jumped into the beers that you're enjoying within the last 2 hours or so. But otherwise, I'm still doing work in the Guys Drinking Beer site, still flogging the book wherever I can, which is not here because this is a nonprofit radio station. So
you can talk about the book a little bit, very briefly.
I have produced a book.
Yes.
It exists. It can be purchased.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yes.
What is the
in
beer?
some places.
What is it called?
It's called Beer Lovers Chicago, and it's all about Chicagoland beer.
Got it.
Surprise.
Okay. Got it.
Ooh,
Oh, look at
Kate has a
that!
copy.
Look at that!
Sweet.
That might be a nice.
Wonderful.
That might be a nice segue.
Kate, can we hear you, Kate?
Yeah, can you?
There we go.
Yeah.
Woo.
Here sounds great.
She was laughing and such, but she wasn't making any noise, so I didn't know whether it was actually going to work.
Art of silent laughing.
Yes. Ms. Kate Bernot, thanks for coming on. First-time guest, and the deal is first-time guests introduce themselves. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment or two to tell everyone who you are and what you do and how that relates to beer, I'm sure they would appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very cool to be talking to you. Long time listener, first time caller, I guess.
Sweet.
I'm Kate Bernot. I am a beer writer and editor. Right now, I'm the associate editor at a new website called The Takeout, which spun off from the AV Club and their food coverage. Mm-hmm. So we are a food and beverage website. Obviously, I do a lot of beer writing there. And then before that, I was a beer editor at Draft Magazine. And way before that, in my Chicago days, I was the nightlife reporter at Red Eye. Shout out to Red Eye.
Yeah.
And I'm a certified beer judge, a Pisces, and I write about beer around around the internet and magazines.
In places that can be seen.
Places that can be seen indeed and read.
Pisces, that means your birthday is just around the corner or somewhere near.
It just was.
Just was. There you go. See? I know my signs. I know what's what. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on. And let me see. So it's a little bit different show. So we've got 3 people who focus in beer media as guests.
It's a different kind of insider.
Right. As well as myself, who is a retailer as well as a I do this thing too. And I was talking with the reason I came up. So the idea is to have, a show that is very much specifically just people who talk about beer and kind of focusing on that side of things. I think it's pretty interesting what's going on that side of things. Well, I think beer right now is absolutely fascinating. I don't know about you guys, but I have, for the first time in a while, no idea where anything is going. It is just bananas bonkers right now. Little frightening, but for me anyway. But I was talking with, I can't think I can say, Doug Valicki, and he was trashing this article called "Why I Hate Beer" or "Why Your Beer Podcast."
It's called "Your Beer Podcast Sucks."
Yeah, that one. Trashing it, telling me I definitely shouldn't read it, and that everyone shouldn't read it. No, he was saying everyone should read it. He thought it was very interesting, and then I was just thinking in my head that maybe we should talk about that topic, and why not just talk about more stuff like that, and then tried to gather some people together. Josh Noel bailed on me because he's having a kid today. So, I mean,
what kind of an excuse is that?
Congratulations to you. No, congrats to Josh and his wife and the Noel family. Yes, the expanded family. Yes. And Carl, I mean, one of the people that, I think you immediately came back and said that we should have Kate on, which I thought was an amazing idea. It's always in hindsight that you realize that it's been way too long to have people on. So thank you, Kate, for coming on. So we're just going to kind of do something new.
It's a bit of a theme show.
And the way this show's started, I think it's going to be smooth sailing, and it's going to be
peachy keen.
It's going to be peachy keen. It's going to be great. But before we get to that, I just wanted to prepare people for what's going on. I wanted to talk about, we have a regular segment, and it's called What Beers Have You Been Drinking Lately? So this is the segment where we talk about what beers people have been drinking lately, or what beers they're excited about, want to try, stuff like that. And it can be beers that they really liked or that they really didn't like or whatever. So I'll throw it out there, Carl, for maybe, is there anything that you've had?
I recently had the opportunity to go to Unane for the first time. I have had their beers in the past. I have uniformly enjoyed them. But in the tap room, they had, when you go to a tap room for the first time, you have a certain set of expectations that you have. I think, it's like, okay, there's going to be a pale ale, there's going to be an IPA, there's going to be, 2 or 3 other things that are kind of weird. Maybe they'll have a lager sort of thing.
So for, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So for Unane, I just wanted to, before you said anything, I wanted to tell you what I have not been there. Mm-hmm. I'm sad to say. I consider Jerry a friend, and he's been on the show several times, and but I have not been to his tap room. But I have some expectations of what I think that place would be like, and that is very angular and everything black and white, either in stripes or checks, squares, blocks.
It's pretty gray. I mean, it is pretty. I don't know. That's the impression that I was left with. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the window out front is still not a window. It's actually plywood.
In, yeah.
So there's very little daylight getting in there. We were there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
He was on before a couple weeks ago, and a car literally smashed through the front of his tap room.
When you pull off of Gulf Road in Niles, you turn right, and it is right in front of you. And I totally understand how that could happen now, and I give them a lot of respect for leaving these skid marks on the floor.
Oh, that's awesome! I hope they leave those forever.
There is, and well, it
is black.
The thing that's double impressive is that there were 2 skid marks on the floor. One's on the solid ground, just like concrete floor. The other's on a carpet. And that carpet is like exactly where it lines up exactly like the vehicle would be. It's not like it's off kilter or anything. It is exactly like how that car landed in the front of the thing.
How is that possible?
Like they glued it to the ground to make sure that the car track was still where it was at the time. I don't know. It could have been a coincidence. I thought it was really impressive.
Yeah.
And
how do you get a skid mark on a carpet?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay.
I can only report what I saw, and what I saw was really fun to see that they had. It's a bit of it feels like a trophy.
Yeah,
we survived a car driving through the front of our brewery, and sat down at the bar, had a wide variety of barrel aged and fruited sours, which I just enjoyed across the board. The one specifically that I really liked was, I believe, called Le Grand Monde 2018-1.
Yeah.
Which was barrel aged and I think had black currants and vanilla beans in it.
Ooh.
And it was just, I tried everything. Everything was really good. It was very, tart, acid, strong. So there's no mistaking these as sours. The fruit was really well integrated into them, but then the barrel character on this one just shined through. Everything really played in harmony. The vanilla was kind of in the back. The black currant played with the sourness that was going on. It was just really nicely done, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, Unane is a brewery where I've noticed now that they dabble into different styles. They've done it a couple different times where they started out as a classic Belgian brewery. They were doing triples and quads, and they had like a Belgian IPA, but it was not like these Belgo IPAs. It was almost like a Duranc XX bitter style Belgian IPA, and then they went to now they're doing a lot of hazy beers and pastry stouts and sours and stuff. But every time they do it, they are, I think, one of the better examples of the style that is available here in Chicago. So I think that just goes to show that Jerry is a really good and versatile brewer who can.
And there was still a quad on the menu.
Yeah.
I think they had a triple on as well. But
his triple, I think, is one of the best triples in the country. Personally, it's amazing.
I had to drive back past Old Orchard Mall, which didn't seem like the best time to be drinking something that was 13%. So sadly, I'll have to take your word on that one. But yeah, I mean,
we have it in the store, so you can come on by.
All right,
you don't have to take my word.
Duly noted.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, interesting. How about you, Matt? Anything you've had lately other than the 12-pack of Firestone?
I did have a chance to, there's that cluster of Northside Chicago breweries near Half Acres, New Balmoral Place, and Spiteful's right there too, and Empirical and whatnot. And I don't think that I've been to any of them, but I did get a chance to get to Spiteful.
You didn't give me a ring? I'm like 5 minutes from there. Thanks.
Well, we didn't really know that we were going to be going there, and but yeah, I felt really comfortable inside Spiteful's tap room area. It was an interesting place. Will happened to be there, and
Sir William
gave us a little peek in the back, so that was interesting. And it's just we had multiple of their beers, and I liked everything I was having there, but I was interested in how I was feeling that day. I was feeling comfortable in their tap room, and I don't say that about every bar or brewery or whatever, but and I don't think that they it's not a fancy place. I wouldn't say it's just a pretty standard kind of a place, but they have a couple of little things here and there that I thought were interesting and made the experience delightful and comfortable, and that nice tire track mark for Unune.
Someone just texted me a picture of, I think a video actually, of the skid mark on, I don't know if you can see that, Kate, but it's pretty amazing. So I'm sorry, though.
But yeah, so Spiteful was an interesting place to go to, and we were going to go to Half Acre, but
you didn't make it next door.
Never made it half next door because, well, we were going to go to Half Acre, but then like on the way to Half Acre, because we parked on the south side of their building, but that's not where the entrance is.
You would think that it would be easier to go from Spiteful to Half Acre, which is right next door, but you literally have to walk all the way around the block to get in.
Yeah, to the other corner, kind of.
Guys, what you do is you park in Half Acre's parking lot, and then immediately leave, go down the alley, and go to Spiteful, and then when you come back, you're already at Half Acre, and you stop in and you get a beer. That's how you do it.
I thought you were going to say park in Half Acre's parking lot. Uber to Hopleaf.
Yeah, exactly. And then go home and forget where your car is.
Exactly.
Yes. So, well, you got to go back to. It's another reason to go and be right near me and not contact me. So you can now go to Half Acre.
I have been in Half Acre before, but it was well before they opened up the tap room, public area.
Food's amazing. Yeah.
So,
well, cool. And Kate, anything that you've had lately that you've liked?
Well, naturally, because I was reporting this sort of longer piece about New England IPAs for Thrillist, I've been drinking a lot of lager.
Okay.
So lately, I have been digging on this Schwarzbier from Heirloom out of Tulsa. Ex-Prairie brewer. Now doing lagers and open fermented lagers. Very cool things. The Schwarzbier was killer. It's called Black Cauldron. And yeah, I mean, when was the last time a Schwarzbier blew your mind?
Right.
But this one did.
How did this come across your palate or glass? Or, I don't know, desk?
The brewer there, Jake Miller, I don't know when I first got in touch with him. Maybe he went from Prairie to Wolves and People, which is in Oregon, I believe. And then he was hanging out with Bob Sylvester at St. Somewhere down in Tarpon Springs, Florida for a while. And somehow we got in touch. And then he actually came out to Missoula, where I live now, in the state of Montana. And we got to hang out and have a beer. And it just sounded like he was doing really, really cool stuff, and got to try a crowler of the Schwarzbier and immediately wished I had a pipeline from Tulsa to Missoula so I could have it all the time.
Wow.
But yeah, it's really, really great.
I didn't know you were in Montana. So you have really, man, you're gone
where did you
place.
think I was?
On the East Coast. I don't know why. Yeah.
Nope, out west.
Oh, cool. Cool. So it's a Schwarzbier, and it's called Black Cauldron.
Yep. Just dry with a lot of kind of dark chocolate and really brioche under that, and just you could drink gallons of it.
Okay, so also really drink. Well, I mean, yeah, you said dry, so cool. That's awesome. I love when a fairly obscure style kind of breaks through and grabs your attention. I really hope that the future of craft beer kind of goes that way, where breweries are kind of having these breakout beers of their own style. I think, Allagash White is a great example of that with their wit beer, but then you also have it's just coming to mind right now because we're sitting in Mars land, but Mars Jungle Boogie, I think, is kind of interesting that way, where it's a tea-infused wheat beer, and you have like Live Oaks, Hefeweizen, and stuff like that. I think it's cool when that sort of thing happens, and awesome that now we've got an awesome Schwarzbier to go try. So
yeah, Kate, you mentioned 4 breweries. I recognized one.
Right.
It was, and I love it when that happens. It's just it's a nice reminder that the world is large.
Happens all the time to me. All the time.
For me, I was just in you letting me know that I have to mention that you're listening to 105.5 FM WLPN Chicago, Matt? Okay, yeah, duly noted. For me, I was just in Philadelphia very briefly. I didn't get to go to the cool spots and stuff like that, but I did notice that I'd seen a resurgence in Hop Devil from Victory. I was in a couple different places, and all of them had Victory Hop Devil on draft. So I grabbed one, and it was a time warp. I was kind of expecting for them to have adjusted the recipe, kind of like Stone did, kind of publicly a few years back. And I'm guessing that not so publicly, a lot of breweries have been doing it to their flagship IPAs. It didn't seem like that with Hop Devil. It was aggressive and malty and quite bitter. It was really enjoyable, and I was frankly surprised to see it on draft lists out there in the Philadelphia suburbs. So that was kind of cool, and I enjoyed the one that I had. Also, I just grabbed this from the fridge. I didn't have a chance. I came right from the airport, so I didn't have a chance to bring any beer with me. So I stole beer from the Co-Prosperity Sphere. I have a feeling most of these beers are ghosts of shows past that have been left here. I doubt that there's a barrel-aged coffee break abduction just sitting around here.
Just happenstance.
I think this is probably from the show that Mike Shalal guest hosted last minute for me several weeks ago. It is really, really good. So I recommend anyone here who has the ability to try that. I think it's about time that we take a quick station break, listen to a couple promotions of other shows, some underwriting perhaps, stuff like that. And you guys can hang in there and hear about some of the other shows that Lumpen Radio has to offer. And then we will be back with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my guests, Kate Bernat, Carl Clockers, and Matthew Arata. DJ Matthew Arata. So let's get right into it, I suppose. I mean, we've got a bunch of fancy beer talking and beer writing people here, and I think we should talk to you, Carl, about why you hate beer podcasts.
This is inaccurate.
Okay.
I do not hate beer podcasts.
Oh.
I want to love beer podcasts, but as someone who spent a decade in the broadcast industry, I have had thoughts percolating for some time about a number of the podcasts that I have listened to. And I'm not going to name anybody specifically. I'm not going to call anybody
He's
under the
pointing
carpet.
at me right now.
I'm not going to. I come here not to praise Chris, but to bury him. No, I just there's some things that I've noticed that if anyone's going to point out, it should be the beer dork with a website that's also worked in radio. So I put together a quick list of some of the things that were just glaring errors that some people had done and deserve to be mentioned. I thought.
Yeah, I thought it is definitely a good list of things to try to do and to try not to do, I would say, if you're doing a beer themed podcast or a radio show.
And do you? So I mean,
I'm not. I'm saying that I'm sure I'm guilty of some of the don'ts on there, but I think.
Can I just run through them quickly so people who haven't read
Please do.
Hear? Yeah. So it's, don't do your podcast for the people in the room. Don't podcast drunk.
I probably should have put that one first.
Yeah. Don't assume everyone has listened to every episode you've ever done. Guilty. Don't keep things closed off. Skyping people in usually sucks. Sorry, Kate. Remember your audience, and don't forget to entertain. Yeah.
I think number one is the hugest violation. out of all those commandments.
And why? How?
Because it seemed so many podcasts seem like just an echo chamber, just like musings today with Tom and Brad in their basement, and it's like, what are you offering me that I couldn't Google or I couldn't taste for myself? You know?
Right. I feel it's funny. I feel podcasts. It can be both ways, though. It can be if you have two really entertaining people and you like to hear their opinions. Sometimes that can work. I mean, podcasts are – so now podcasts are – NPR has podcasts. So there's a difference between something made by, I don't know, Earwolf or NPR.
Those people are smart.
Well, that's like there are professional podcasting studios now, like the Co-Prosperity Sphere. And then there's people who are just doing it in their basement, which is – totally fine, and I think
also
the heart
of
podcasting, personally. I think that's kind of what's amazing about podcasting.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to almost exclusively podcasts.
Wow.
Because I got into radio because in 5th grade I was listening to talk radio. I was not listening to music. That's just kind of like naturally what I gravitate to. And like my favorite podcasts are ones where, where the host is knowledgeable, the host has a point of view, and it's not someone that's been in the broadcast industry forever, because that builds a lot of bad habits that don't work for a podcast format. And I don't want to get this to be totally too meta deep, like podcasting about podcasts. But there is... And I'm guilty of it, too.
I mean, this is the episode to do it in, man. I mean, go. Riff, man.
It's easy to forget that there are other people out there that are actually listening to you, despite the fact that we all have headphones on our heads and are speaking into microphones. When you're in the same place, in the same room, looking at the same four walls, it's easy to forget that the rest of the world is out there. So, you always need to keep people in mind beyond the walls of whatever you're doing, and remember that... I don't know. Maybe I did put the thing at the top where don't do the thing for the room, and recognize that there's a great big world out there that can interact with you and wants to like you. They have downloaded this. They have interacted with this. They have chosen to give you part of their listening time to say, I want to hear what you have to say. And there are things that you can easily avoid to make them go, okay, that was enough.
I mean, truth be told, the main reason that this show started was because I was listening to beer podcasts and like shouting at like the room, because I was just like, no, that's wrong, that's not right, this isn't right, you guys don't know what you're talking about, that's wrong, this is wrong. And then wanting to get some people who at least had hopefully informed or somewhat informed opinions to just get in and kind of talk about just beer stuff, but at least coming from a position where, and this is going to be kind of ironic since I joke about hot takes all the time, but coming from a position where at least if they're not knowledgeable on something, they may know that they're not knowledgeable, rather than just kind of completely spout BS out there.
Yeah.
So
and,
I mean, that's
credit where it's due. Like a lot of the things that I was thinking about that you do on this show right now are some of the things that I think should be done. Like, you introduce a show every week, Chris. Yep. You say right up at the front, here's what we're doing here. And not everybody does that. Some people just jump in and say, hi, we're drinking this, and 45 minutes later they're all drunk and laughing and having a great time, but I am not.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of these rules seem to also apply to written things too. I mean, who are you writing for? If you, whether you're a professional or you have a beer blog or you have a beer website, whatever, same rules apply. Maybe the Skype one accepted, but remember who you're writing for. It's not your diary.
Yeah. Steve and I did exactly one show.
Steve
Massney, my co-host on Beer Download. Also
frequent guest
of this show. Also Beer Download, also on Lumpen Radio, Saturdays at 4.
Well done.
We did exactly one show drunk. It was after The Great Taste of the Midwest. It was horrible, for us to do, for me at least.
For you were the one who was drunk.
I was. Definitely.
I remember hearing that.
It was,
but it's the most beloved show in your show's history.
Some people like it, but we don't do that was the only show that we did like that.
Because it's an anomaly. Yeah.
And I know, I mean, just from doing it, that it was difficult to even just do. Like, it's difficult to fill time, to fill air and to stay on topic and to speak a complete thought and et cetera. And that's what we try to do when we're really doing the show, and it just goes completely out the window.
Yeah. That's funny. I did a show where I had gone to a Cubs game before I went on the air, and I think I'd had like 8 to 10 beers before I got on the air, which is
because you're a professional.
Because I'm a professional. And it's funny, and maybe it's the exception because it's not normal for this show, because it is still, I don't know if it's like the number one favorited show, but it's one that people always bring up in kind of I get very embarrassed when people bring it up, but they bring it up in overwhelmingly positive ways, which is kind of funny. I would still never be like, oh, get drunk before the show. That's the key to good content.
I think the moral of that story is any podcast, you're allowed to do exactly one episode.
You get one.
Completely
we do it just
off your
for
rocker.
ourselves. Okay.
But to your point, I have a feeling that people bring that up because it felt like a transgression to the usual conversations that you have here, where you bring in people of varying backgrounds and different interests, and you do what you do, and then when the host shows up after 80 some odd shows and he's a little lit, it's funny. I get it.
Yeah, and it is a beer podcast. I mean, and at some point you have to remember that this show can get a little serious. I mean, I've gotten on some pretty tall soapboxes in my podcasting career, and sometimes you just have to, have a little fun with it as well.
Something that I don't think that you covered at all in your write up there was, and I don't know if this is a definitely you should do, but it's something I've thought about a little bit is. There used to be a morning radio show in Chicago where there was 2 females and a male on the show every day, and the 2 female voices sounded nearly identical to me, and it was impossible for me to understand who was who when they were talking. I'm not trying to dig at either of them. I'm just saying their voices were so similar that I couldn't tell. Me and my co-host, he has a booming, deep voice. My voice is somewhat higher. It's pretty clear who's talking when each of us is talking. So that was just an interesting thing. Like if you're trying to plan one out, you don't have, like, if you're trying to get hosts together maybe to plan a show and do it.
That's why 2 women can never host a podcast.
That's true. That's true.
That's actually a law.
That's the rule. That's just the law.
This show was originally supposed to be co-hosted by 2 women, and then Edmar came to me and asked me to do it instead. So.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying just think about the tenor of your voices.
And you know what? Like I did think about that a little bit, and you can't control your voice, but a good host can say. If you guys sounded exactly
Carl.
the same, thanks, Carl.
Yeah.
Exactly, that sort of thing. And one of the podcasts that I listen to regularly is done by a comedian named Dana Gould, and at the beginning of every show, he introduces his guests, and his guests say, "This is the sound of my voice," at the beginning of every show.
Right.
And then everybody knows.
Yeah.
Right. So
there are other things to do. Some people adopt some kind of character, so it's very clear that person is that character, and they're always that character and things like that. I'm not saying you should do that either. There's lots of tricks.
Little theater of the mind never kill anybody.
So this is a little. So we're talking about beer podcasts, I guess, specifically. So when you're saying like remember your audience, I mean, do you Carl and Kate and Matt? I mean, do you listen to beer podcasts where you feel that they're not talking to you? Is it that they're talking to each other, or is that they're talking to
if they're
a
talking
group
to
outside
each other
of who you're interested in?
If they're talking to each other and they forget that I exist and I'm listening, that's the cardinal sin. If they forget that this is a show and has become a conversation, then turn the microphones off and just have a beer and talk to your friend. That's great. Not everything needs to be recorded. I think it's more so like in terms of like know your audience, do something for Beyond the Room, just kind of like have an idea of who you're talking to, who you're trying to reach, what level of beer expertise you expect them to have. I mean, sitting here in this room, this wouldn't work if we were just, trying to do Beer 101 all the time. We have to assume a certain level of expertise. But that doesn't mean that, if you're not everybody knows what flocculate means. And
yeah, and that's one that I toe personally a line where I think the people who listen to this show are probably a little bit more educated in beery things than the average podcast listener, for sure, and maybe even the average beer podcast listener, because if they're listening to this show more than once or twice, they're probably into the stuff we're talking about. But flocculate, yeah, I mean, there's things where you do want to kind of go in and talk about how what flocculate means.
Yeah, so Chris,
which I won't say.
What is flocculation?
Right? It's a mystery.
Just so we all know. No, I've done that here on this show. If somebody's dropped kind of a fancy term, sometimes I've chimed in being like, so what do you mean when you say flocculate?
Right.
And I do that on our show often. I mean, we don't really have a specific target in what level that we talk at, but sometimes when we get too deep into some subject, sometimes we'll step back and kind of cover what we're talking about. And the other thing that I know that we do, at least Steve and I, he typically acts as the primary host, the main host, and I typically act as more of the producer. I sometimes prompt him with questions and stuff. So it's
like you come in right on time and set up the show perfectly. You do that's your job, is to do that stuff. More.
Yes,
okay, got it.
Yeah,
I'm just
totally
trying to
my
understand
job.
what you mean.
Totally my job.
I get it.
I'll try to prompt him sometimes with a question or here, or be like, do you mean that, or so it's less of a conversation a little bit. It's less of a little bit more of like a question and answer, and he'll talk for the most part.
So I want to play devil's advocate a little bit more because, really, I mean, what I wanted to do with this show is really just what I enjoyed doing, which was sitting around with people who I could have stimulating conversation with and try to I felt like I was in a really unique position to get to talk to a lot of people who had a lot of really cool opinions and had a lot of insight and a lot of experience with beer, and let people kind of listen into what we thought about this stuff. I don't want to pat myself on the shoulder or anything like that, but those are the things about beer that I really enjoy. I mean, I say it very robotically, the opening monologue, but it's true. I mean, my favorite stuff is to talk about beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and that's what I really enjoy doing. And I think there also just needs to be, you have to be, I don't know, I guess you don't have to be natural about it. You could probably go and do a podcast by numbers and make it very entertaining as well. But I would say there's probably an exception to every rule.
Yeah.
And that you got to be yourself, and you have to have fun. You have to.
I don't believe I don't believe in rules. I believe in guidelines.
It also happened. I think a lot of people with beer podcasts would agree with you, Chris, and would say exactly what you just said. I love talking about beer with my friends who I think have interesting opinions. You just happen to have the right friends.
Well, they're not. Yeah, I said people. They're not really. I mean, I hate Matt, but I respect and admire his opinion.
Yes, professional associate, LinkedIn connection.
But I mean, in your world, Chris, in a large part, I mean, the people that you see on a regular basis are a lot of business. You would call them business associates. I mean, some of them become friends over time, but the people through the store all the time, or you're out and about, and and it's your job to know those people, and then they do have interesting things to say, and they're embedded in the various parts of the industry. So sometimes the questions that you or a general listener would have, that's straight to the source of the information.
Yeah,
and that's the premise of this show.
And there's also a different vibe and a different energy you get when you get three people who don't know each other in the same room versus a couple friends hanging out, having beers, talking about it.
Yeah. This is the first time that Carl and I have been on the show together.
That's
even though
correct.
we've both been on multiple episodes.
And that's why this show is the best.
Aw. I mean, but don't take my word for it. Take the North American Association of Beer Guild people thing. Well, cool. Is there anything we want to say about this stupid article, or should we move on?
No, you're
Just
right. It's
kidding.
stupid.
No,
it's totally stupid.
No, it was a good article. It's on guysdrinkingbeer.com.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I had multiple people tell me about it and tell me to read it.
If you are reading that and you recognize anything that because I assume there's some people who do beer podcasts that listen to your podcast. Mm-hmm. If you happen to read this and you recognize anything in yourself, then maybe go, oh, okay, I can maybe do that a little bit better. This is not to say stop doing anything. This is not to say your creative effort is garbage and worthless. It's just some things just drive me nuts.
Yeah, this is you leaving.
And I have 1,000 words.
An iTunes review for multiple beer podcasts at once.
It is a lot about efficiency as well.
Yes. Any closing thoughts for you guys?
Nobody asked me what I think about blind beer tasting on an audio podcast.
There's a lot of
excellent audio podcast.
I will say that there are a lot of beer radio shows, podcasts where it's tasting beer, and I have found this goes all the way back to craft beer radio, like the OG of beer podcasts. I think they're probably like 2006 or they're really, really old. And it was interesting and novel at the time, and I like those guys and I like all that stuff. But to me, I do think that it can only go so far, and there's plenty of people who are doing it well already. I would say if you're going to do a beer podcast, don't just make it doing beer reviews on the air. Have something else to it.
The tasting was the original theme of our show, and we very quickly decided that this is kind of boring even for us.
Right.
And then it became like 75% not tasting the beer.
Yeah, I mean,
I think of beer tasting the same way I think about like kind of recaps of beer events. It's like if you're there. You're there. You don't really need someone else to explain the premise of it to you. And then if you're not there, then why do you want to listen to someone else taste a beer you're not drinking or can't get? Or
Yep. I 100% agree. But I think you can do things that can riff on that. I mean, I had a video. It's sad that I'm saying had. Am I giving in and saying I'm not going to be doing that show anymore? The video
When's
review
the last
show?
time you did one?
I don't want to talk about it. And I tried to change it up. I tried to educate. If you did styles, talk about the style, talk about examples that people can get and do on their own, and maybe taste along with you, and how you can vary within the style, or do some blind tasting, or do stuff about. Just try to keep it interesting, rather than this is this beer. Okay, little caramel malt, little toasty, good hop, and I give it like 43 bottle caps out of 72. So all right, something like
Smash that like button, bro.
Yeah, right.
Well, then you're offering context, which is what people want. I mean, context or access to something, access to information or people they don't know or couldn't hear from. Added, value added there.
Dude, you got to keep doing your video show, but only do Wales, bro.
Wales, bro. That's right. These are all beers you will never see. Just watch me drink them.
If I have a vote and you do go Walesboro only, can you please make sure just to chug them? Because I'm really missing just keep tasting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. There might be some combining of forces there.
You know what? I one time
podcast collaboration.
Let's take a quick break in a moment and then get back to what I would think is going to be the meat of the show an hour in. And that's I videoed in my old shop a blind tasting of people drinking some regular beers and some whales, and then saying which one they liked, and they had to say which one they liked more before I revealed it. I never put that episode out, but it was kind of it is funny to see when people are drinking Whales Bro and they don't know that they're Whales Bro. That I used to do that a lot with the tastings at the shop when we would do blind tastings, and you never knew what one of them was going to be. And it was very interesting when you liked the one that you could get on the shelf more than, the one that was rated in the top 5 on, Untapped or something like that. So anyway.
I bet the people that you did that to learned something.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other people would also learn that just because you like the label doesn't mean that you like the beer better.
Right. And I also think that when you're drinking a beer that is rated super highly alone, and then maybe on top of it, you had to jump through hoops to get the chance to just try, it's going to alter your perception of that beer. I mean, legitimately. So you are going to be enjoying that beer more, but when you take away the hoops and the hype,
and someone just hands it to you,
taste it, and you don't know what it is, then it's not going to have the same. It's not really going to transcend beer. Now, if you love the hunt and it's really like I've been hunting and now I just want to see what this thing tastes like. Oh, that's what it tastes like, after the hunt. Maybe it's someone who doesn't really love the taste of swordfish, but he loves the fact that he had to, fly down to Florida, get on a boat, go out on a boat all day, troll for a fish, finally get one, spend hours pulling it in, and then gets to taste it. I mean, maybe it's more of kind of like that thing. Or I guess it should be a whale.
Hashtag swordfishes, bro.
Yeah, swordfish, bro.
You can buy swordfish at the grocery store. Right? And it could be just as delicious as that swordfish you harpooned yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And that swordfish is Old Rasputin.
Right. 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 But here's what I'm saying, Kate, is but you won't truly enjoy it, and to that person it will taste better. Now, that person could then say, I'm going to have a chef cut up a piece of the fish that you pulled out of the ocean versus one that was really fresh, and have you taste them side by side, and you might not be able to pick one from the other, but that doesn't mean that you are truly enjoying the one that you pulled out of the water more. Like, you are enjoying the whale more because it's a special occasion, and you had to do all this stuff to get that beer into your glass. So I don't want to detract and say that you're being stupid for enjoying the occasion and that you love the beer. And there's also a lot of cognitive dissonance for how much you paid. What's up, Matt? Do I have to do something?
Chris wanted to remind you that you're listening to WLPN LP, Chicago 105.5 FM. You may continue.
Oh, yeah, that. So, there is some psychology there that I think is legitimate. I mean, if you're if you've always wanted to go to see a Cubs game at Wrigley Field and you finally go there after wanting to for 20 years, you're much more likely to say it was the best game you've ever been to.
And they make a great hot dog. Which they do not.
Exactly. Best hot dog I ever had. Right. But that said, I don't know how we got onto that Whales Bro thing, but that's all we're going to be drinking from now on. Let's take a break, guys. And then we're going to come back. We're talking about beer writing, beer reporting, beer stuff. Doesn't matter anymore. Kate would probably say no, I'm guessing. But in the meantime, we'll listen to some tunes and come back in 5 or 10, we'll say, and then listen to more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Laid out low, nothing to go.
Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, setting up the show like a good host should, and I am joined.
Attaboy. There you go.
Yeah, I'm joined by you. You are
Carl Clockers.
That's the sound of his voice, and you are
Matt Arata.
That's the sound of your voice, and you are. There's a little bit of a delay, and she's also muted. Yeah, unmute your mic there. All right, that's Kate Bernat, and she's also here, and you're going to hear the sound of her voice.
Is she there
Oh,
now?
I can hear her now. Great. To let people know the sound of your voice, because we were doing a little gag there. A little.
Oh, haha.
Yes,
This is me.
that's you. No, we weren't doing a gag on you. We just ruined it
As I'm
by.
desperately pressing every button on my laptop, like one of these is gonna unmute me.
Yeah. So, this is something that. So I talked about earlier how Doug Vilicky was telling me about this article that you wrote, Carl, and then I kind of was thinking about this show conceptually, and then I went to a bunch of non-beer writers and I asked them, for some stuff that they'd want to hear people like you folks talk about on a show like this. So, I just wanted to kind of talk about what beer writing is in the current, day and age of specifically craft beer, but I would say beer overall is fine as well. And I really just wanted to make it kind of a little open-ended discussion. There's specifics that people ask, and I can have it just be like kind of a Q&A type thing. But I figured first we should just talk about generally. I mean, what do you think the current climate of beer writing is right now? And where do you think it has gone, and where do you think we're at? I'm seeing somebody pointing to somebody else, so I'm just going to start with you, Kate. I mean, what do you think the current climate is?
I think that's wow.
Are you comfortable answering that question? Yeah, are you comfortable answering that question? No.
Comfortable offering my perspective on that question.
Yeah. No, we gave the disclaimer in the beginning. You're safe.
Yes, exactly. I think I think it depends, obviously, what we're talking about when we say beer writing. Are we talking about people that cover the beer industry for trade publications, for business publications? Are we talking about hobbyists, writers blogging at home? Are we talking about beer-focused magazines and radio and that kind of thing? I mean, it's a big
sure.
basket.
So let me trim some of that off. Let's say not. Let's take away the Brewbounds, the beer business dailies, the not the industry rag side of things.
So
let's not
beer writing.
Yeah, consumer beer writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there are fewer outlets than ever at which to do it professionally. Speaking as someone whose former magazine no longer has a print publication.
Draft Mag,
Yeah, Draft Mag, RIP print Draft Mag. It had a good run. I think there are fewer professional outlets at which to do it, at least in the old school sense of it. That said, there are tons of digital places to do it, which are, I think, equally valid and have their own inherent opportunities. So, it feels like a perilous time for beer and beer writing. As you mentioned earlier, kind of, we don't know where things are going in beer. And I certainly feel that way. I'm very glad to be on the writing side and not the owning a brewery side, for sure. But it seems that way in media, too, that we're all just kind of swimming along and trying to pay our bills, sleep at night, and maintain enough credibility and sense of pride to not need therapy.
Well, I mean, it seems to me, I was telling somebody, I think just yesterday or today, that it seems to me like there was a point in time, maybe even just 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, where craft was taking off so quickly that everybody wanted to jump on board because they didn't know how high and how long it's going to go. And I think now, in the past year, let's say, maybe even less, people are they don't know how high it's going to go specifically, but generally they know how high it isn't going to go. And they're making changes, adjustments as a result. So it's not that people aren't just going to throw money at anything with the moniker craft beer on it, whether it's a brewery or a distributor or a publication or a podcast on a community radio station, which our funding has stayed exactly the same. I am happy to say we still get zero funding, so it's not been dropped at all. I don't have to pay. I don't have to pay. It's nice. So I think that there is a parallel there, Kate. There were magazines just kind of like, what was it, 5-6 years ago, there was the Beer Connoisseur and Draft Magazine, and there was also, some of the older ones like Beer Advocate and All About Beer, and I'm sure I'm missing. There were some other ones too.
I think there was just one that was called Beer.
There was one that was very like Maxim. Like,
I think that was it, yeah.
Yeah, like very Maxim kind of style. And I'm sure I'm missing several others. And it's, consolidating because I guess people realized that beer publications wasn't going to bring back the publication industry. And so beer writing, are you saying, Kate, that it's kind of moved online? I mean, you specifically have gone from 2 print spaces to an online space. So
yeah, completely. And I think that's fair to say. The overhead is lower,
right?
And you're not selling glossy ads, which must have been incredibly difficult to do in the last couple of years. And not to say there aren't, still print beer publications like Craft Beer and Brewing, which I've been doing some freelance for. Shout out to Craft Beer and Brewing. Plug the people that pay me, right? No. Speaking of craft journalism. But not to say there aren't still magazines that people want to hold and put on their coffee table and keep around, but then there's the internet, and that's just the larger media landscape, and beer is a little slice of that. So I don't think it's necessarily like there are some things specific to beer media, but I think that's media,
Yeah.
Kate, how many hands would it take to count the people that make a full-time salary from reporting about beer?
Oh, we all meet on Tuesdays. There's 4 of us. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's not many. Almost
many.
no one.
No, hardly anyone.
In an industry that is how big? What's the dollar figure right now? How much money is going?
And again, we're talking about consumer. We're not talking about like Chris Fernari's been on the show before. We're not counting people like him at Brewbound.
No, I'll count him too. I'll count everybody that writes full time about beer. How many people
then
is it?
10.
Right.
We're up to 2 whole hands of people that report full time independently about beer.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like
it's
kind of scary.
I mean, they're consulting, they're writing books, they're doing events, they're event planners. Basically, they do great jobs on social media. I mean, if you are a full-time beer writer now, I mean, you've got to be good at a ton of different stuff, and it's not like you just make your money handing in 2,000 words at a clip.
And it's so
which makes it messy.
Right. And what happens is then it makes it messy. And I think it also, I mean, do you think that is potentially So as an outlet then, I mean, for breweries, I mean, there's just not a lot of places for them to get objective writing coverage. Yeah. is a better way to put it. Yeah.
I don't think breweries want the objective coverage. I think the reader expects the objective coverage. I think the brewery is more than happy to control the message and kind of write a check and say, this is what this is going to say. I get the final edit, and go to town and write about this thing, and that's called marketing. At the same time, there's not a lot
advertorial,
spontent. There's lots of fun ways to talk about it. And, I'm not entirely opposed to it. It's just another way of getting your message out. But, much as the BA is doing a heck of a lot of work to distinguish independent and standalone and non-big guy affiliated breweries, it's also harder and harder to tell.
Let's make our own seal. It's an upside-down laptop.
There you go.
Now, Carl?
But is that so? You're saying let's make your own seal. Do you think that is important? Like, what to you guys, to all of you guys, makes for good beer writing?
Well,
yeah, non-beer writer.
So I don't write myself very much. We have our blog, but one article or something a year maybe. Just the radio show or the podcast. I like to read things that are slightly more controversial, but not in a dramatic way. The
writer has a specific point of view and is not beholden to anybody about it.
Yes, maybe that. Or because what a lot of writers are, maybe they don't want to tread too far into things that are controversies because they want to retain their sources and stuff and keep getting content to write about and keep getting them to talk to them. And if they start writing things that are going to piss them off, then maybe that kind of goes away over time. I don't know. But so I like to read things that are a little bit more investigatorial, not as in kind of a gotcha thing or like a, I was thinking about a post that I did many years ago where I was trying to decide what the market was for Dark Lord. This was meant
the aftermarket,
and what the true price, or maybe like what Three Floyds should have been charging at the time, because the aftermarket is paying this price and they're only charging this price. How much is it really worth? Maybe they should be charging this price. And I kind of did this whole analysis kind of thing. It was mostly just for my own benefit, but but things like that I would like to read, analysis and what this kind of thing really means. And I don't know that maybe writers necessarily have time to do that kind of full depth kind of thing, because it's only interesting to kind of maybe a smaller segment.
And it does make some. I mean, it can potentially make some enemies as well. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Maybe Three Floyds wasn't loving that. I know we did something similar here on this show one time.
Yeah, the thing you did was pretty in depth
with BC Rare, and there was definitely blowback. I mean, you guys probably listeners didn't realize it, but there was definitely some blowback. And I'm not talking about Goose Island. I don't want to. It's not necessarily what you guys are thinking out there. It's not that Goose Island was coming after me or anything like that. I don't want to,
but there was some other people.
Yeah. There was just stuff. But anyway, but there can be consequences. So so that's what you
Steve
like.
Steve and I are fairly independent, and we don't do journalism for a living either. So we can kind of take some extra steps into that fray, and
that's just a journalism thing, right? I mean, you can't be known for the person who interviews somebody and then burns them, because beer especially is a small enough industry where you can quickly get a reputation for doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make a choice at a certain point where, like, nobody's off limits and that's your life, or, you find some way to kind of muddle through things. I'm really interested in, like, when I sit down and write, one of the things that I think about a lot is something that I recently read. I think it was on the Beervana site, and he was quoting
Jeff Allworth, one of the best, I would say.
He had a quote that he was talking to someone, and someone told him, some of these beer bloggers have never had a bad beer before. And like, my question is, restaurant reviews, you expect to be told good, bad, or indifferent. Movie reviews, you expect to be told, is this movie good? Is this movie bad? At what point do we get to a level of breweries in the United States where there's enough in the world where it stops being special at all, and we can start saying, this is garbage, don't go to this place, go to this place, this is better, and start being, we don't really have a lot of objective, like, single point of view content. That doesn't exist. At this point, it's largely crowdsourced. It is Beer Advocate and Rate Beer, people largely saying 3 stars.
And a lot of people are begging for the kind of not singular, but somebody who comes from a specific point of view to give reviews where it's not all just
just talking about the good ones.
Yeah, if it's a pastry stout, it's going to get 0.75 more bottle caps. Is
that true of the general public, though? I feel like I read a lot of.
It's a very good question, and I think you're probably
right, that are like, I'd rather read the sum aggregate of 200 people telling me what to drink rather than this one doofus, who says they're a beer judge.
But conceptually, I think, not to tell the people that they don't know what they want, but I mean, that's like saying, I don't want to have a sandwich made for me. I want to go where I have every single thing I could possibly ever put in a sandwich and put it together, and versus one person kind of crafting a sandwich for me. I mean, it's not a perfect analogy, but like, one person might have a better point of view than a bunch of people who knows what's going into it. And those sites, those aggregate sites are they are manipulated. They are. I'm not saying that if you're looking up a beer that has 50,000 reviews, it's going to be manipulated. But I mean, even unknowingly, they might be manipulated by the user base. The user base who is using Untappd. Untappd is probably the best yet to come. But I mean,
just because so many people are using it,
yes,
and because it's a wide variety of people using it,
it's a wider audience,
the super dorks.
But still, like, everything, it's like Amazon reviews. Everything is 4 to 4.5 stars. Everything. So like, it all becomes meaningless to me.
I mean, maybe I'm asking for something that is never ever going to exist, because
what are you asking
beer
for?
Is so.
I know what he's asking for.
Some sort of gatekeeper in the way, like where's the. Anyone that knows the Chicago Reader knows that Mike Sula is kind of like the restaurant reviewer left in town that is like the go-to guy for, like, if Sula says it's good, I know it's good. That's my opinion. We don't have that, like, anywhere.
What
I
about
don't think.
Me? No, okay. I'm joking.
All right.
I'm obvious. No, and that was for those out there. That is tongue in cheek. I am a beer retailer. I have, I mean, even if I was being objective, there's plenty of reasons for people to question whether I was be. I was be.
But I mean, like, reviewing beer is so subjective that, like, it's not a language that all of us have, and there's very many ways to do things so differently. We don't have a language like, this béarnaise sauce is broken. There's no equivalent to that unless it's like, this lager tastes like green beans. And there's not a lot of that. So, like, there's no real one right answer.
You could judge everything according to guidelines, and then people tell you you're boring.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, the more I talk about it, the more I realize that it's never going to happen, and I should just accept it.
Here's the difference.
I disagree.
Here's the difference. So a restaurant reviewer or a movie reviewer is paid by the publication to do those reviews. They go to a place. They don't need access to the chef. They don't need access to the movie producers to do those reviews. So if you can somehow create a beer reviewer who is respected,
anonymous,
who is, well, no, not necessarily anonymous.
A lot of the best beer restaurant reviewers are anonymous.
Well, or they try to
Or they
hide
were
or whatnot.
anonymous.
Were
Yeah.
anonymous until
But-
they get outed. I mean,
Yeah.
I've worked in restaurants where they have pictures of if this man comes
Yeah.
in, let management know immediately.
Totally.
Yeah.
But so unless a publication or something is going to pay one person or a handful of people to just do that, and they don't need to do the other part of the journalism, the talking to people and getting other types of stories and information, that's the difference there, I think, or a big difference.
You think the separation of reviewing and reporting needs to happen? Because at Draft, I mean, I was part of the panel that reviewed beers and scored them.
It was like objective and subjective, right? Doing both.
Well, they were blind tasted and had really very little to do with the reporting I was doing. I thought, really.
So that's good, I think, because Draft has a much bigger name, and it's kind of separated within the publication, especially if most of them were panel tasting. The panel said this. It wasn't just one person. So even if all those people also work for the magazine and in other journalistic capacities, they're not going to get blackballed, by some source.
I mean, I do think that it is different, though. I mean, I think if you had one reviewer who maybe was given everything blind, maybe somebody else gave it to him blind, he wrote the review, or she wrote the review, and then they, found out what it was afterwards. I mean, I think there's some merit to that.
Maybe.
I would like to see
there's
that.
absolutely
Yeah.
merit to it. It's just like whether or not it's going to happen. And I mean, like, it's also just a matter of scale, right? It's easier to review. One brewery can make 100 beers in a year, but there's only X number of breweries in an area. There's 200 some odd breweries in Illinois, the state. There's probably 200 restaurants within a 2-mile radius of where we're sitting right now.
So I want to move from just strictly beer reviewing and stuff like that, and talk more about the general beer journalism marketplace right now, and kind of see where. So I mean, man, is there really much out there? What is the future? I mean, is there a future for objective beer writing? It sounds kind of silly. I would imagine there always would be. I would hope there is.
Hope so.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I feel like if we're gonna get that, that person, it's not their full-time gig. It's not what their livelihood depends on. I'm not a full-time beer writer. I don't get paid full-time to do this. I have a day job, so I have a certain semblance of freedom that other people may not, because my paycheck isn't riding on any one given thing, and I also don't have I don't have to worry about like pulling down a $1,000 Spontent piece versus $100 worth for some other piece that I'm freelancing. I don't have to make those decisions, and those are hard decisions to have to make, and I'm lucky that I don't have to do that, and I have my own channel, and I like to think that what I put into the world, it reflects that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. How does someone then? What's up, Kate?
Oh, I was going to say, I wish every newspaper should be so blessed to have a beer reporter. I mean, in cities where it's merited, but I think someone to cover the business of it, someone to cover the consumer side. I mean, that's why Josh is great, because the Trib, let him, you have the backing and the sort of the ethics of a newspaper standing behind you, enabling you to follow the truth, not to get all newsies or whatever, not to get super high on a journalism soapbox, but I think newspapers afford that kind of shield in a way. You're a little bit insulated from the feedback, perhaps, that could come from something you report.
And you can stand behind something that
you've got a whole editorial thing behind you, and other papers across the the country do still employ beer writers, and whether they only cover beer or cover other things as well. But I think that's a wonderful model that I would hate to see. And they know their local scene better than anyone. I would just hate to see those positions go. But I mean, if it's the choice between a courthouse reporter and that, I don't know.
So let me ask. I mean, as someone who is a beer writer, part-time or full-time, how do you choose what to write about? I mean, what are the things that are kind of going through your head? And I mean, I obviously try to be as honest as possible. And if you don't feel comfortable saying it, maybe say that you don't feel comfortable saying it. I mean, are there things where I mean, a lot of reporters get accused of clickbait. I think is a bad way to necessarily put it, because you have to get eyeballs on your content. But what are some of the struggles that go into what you guys decide to write on?
I write about whatever the hell I feel like writing about.
Okay.
And that is, again, because I don't have, it's not what keeps my lights on, and I don't have a unique impression numbers to hit, and I don't have advertisers to make happy. I would be happy to have advertisers if they thought that the eyeballs that I had on my site were of value. I don't do a lot of asking for that sort of thing because it's kind of a nice to have. But, I recently, beginning of April was the 7th anniversary birthday or whatever of us rolling out the site. I run a weekly email. I said, if you want to sponsor this, that'd be great. But I also have a lot of caveats with that because, I personally don't feel comfortable having Brewery X come in and write a big check and say, this is now powered by Brewery X, because I feel like that impacts how people view me. Mm-hmm. So, I'm very specific in the kind of places who I would accept money from.
Rightly so. I mean, if you get a check from somebody, you might next time report on them a little differently.
Yeah, and I find that terrifying.
That's
I don't know how
that is legit.
I don't know how I would respond.
Especially as a small team.
Yeah.
If you have a big organization, you can separate editorial from advertising as much as you can, but...
Yeah, and again, I have the freedom to do that, and
how
it's
about
the choice that I've made.
I mean, how about you? What goes into... What are some of the things you have to think about before you decide what to write about?
I think first and foremost, I want to tell a cool story. I mean, that's cliche, but, I think I want to write something that
is engaging.
For a consumer audience that even maybe someone who's not super into beer could pick up and still enjoy some aspect of the story, if it's human interest, if it's travel, if it's, something like that. So, something that grabs me and is interesting. And then in a perfect world, I would love to tell stories that either other people aren't telling or I'm coming at it from a different angle. I also just really, really like reporting. And a lot of stories, I think, come out of conversations that I have with, brewers or other people in the beer world, where I go in with kind of one idea about what we're going to talk about, and then I learn something I did not know going in, and then things zag in that direction. So I just do a lot of talking and listening to people I find interesting, and they tell me about interesting things, and it's kind of an honest process of reporting and discovery, I would say.
But what if what you, but it starts with what would make a cool, interesting article. So go into that. I mean, what are you thinking about when, are you thinking oh, that would be awesome, but nobody's going to care about that? Does that happen?
Yeah, that definitely happens. And then I generally don't write the story. Yeah. I mean, if no one wants to read it, it goes in Kate's personal diary, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like, what does your audience want? You know, what do they want to hear about? What are they talking about? And how can you add to that conversation in a way that's different than everyone else?
And what is that right now in your mind? What do people want to hear about?
New England IPA.
Great question. I mean, the New England IPA story I just finished was not actually a pitch of mine. It was an assignment, which I was very happy to dive into. And, you know, I read everything that, well, not everything, but I read what I could find that was already out there. And then I thought, what's missing from this conversation? Whose viewpoint have I not heard yet? What piece of this can I contribute? And usually the answer to that is a lot of reporting.
Okay.
Go in there thinking, what don't I know yet? And who can tell me what I don't know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So just kind of like just digging a little deeper and kind of drilling down into what people are interested in and doing reporting, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of beer writing, and I would like to read more beer reporting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there aren't a lot of stories that break on or information you find out from news articles. It's either reporting on a press release or on a piece of news, or on just
or like my
analysis.
Think piece about XYZ. Like, you know, there's a place for those, especially if you're smart and have a lot of context to offer. But I revert to, I don't know as much as I want to know, and I want to find out more. And I'm going to go talk to the people that know more than I do.
Right. Yeah, there certainly is not an abundance of that today. So then, let me just, this is a little bit more Q&A than some of the other questions, but someone specifically
Is this the speed round?
Right. We don't have a ton of time left, but somebody, more than one person actually asked, this is someone at a brewery, asked if people here felt it was important when talking about reporting on, whatever the context is individually for you guys, is it important to distinguish between corporate versus independent ever or all the time, or does it ever even enter your mind? Just something that more than one person brought that up to me. So
Well,
I don't really usually think about it, but
we on Beer Download are doing a whole craft versus crafty tournament, so we're making that distinction all the time. But that's just what we're doing right now. That's the project right now. So.
But why was that important to you to do?
It was more about, we wanted to see, I guess, if we could, and like I said before, or I alluded to before, we're doing them blind. So, but we wanted to try to see whether the crafty stuff is
selling out mattered.
Yeah. What does it matter? Are we going to get really lopsided here in the ones that we like more than the others when we're trying to do them blind? And so, I mean, we're not really reporting. We're very editorial, but, that's our whole thing right now. Do I think that it is important to always talk about that? No, it's not always important to talk about that. It really depends on the context. And I get... It just depends on the context, and it depends on what stories you're interested to tell. Like if you're just saying this brewery is doing this.
Mm-hmm. Kate, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I was nodding based on the context matters part. I think a lot of what I do for the takeout is just telling people about tasty beers that I liked. And
guys making advertisements about Kirkland Light 48 packs.
Yeah,
that was a winner.
I did not write that story. I wish I had.
I thought that was you. My mistake. Sorry.
It was on AV Club, and kudos to them for finding that. I kicked myself a little bit on that, but I'm glad they wrote it. So. In that case, I mean, where I'm really just telling people I liked this beer, I think you would like it as well. I don't generally get into that just because I don't necessarily think it's relevant to telling someone that a beer was tasty. I think if I was talking about the business of beer, about shelf placement, about the 3-tier system, something, I think that would matter for sure. And I think that would be something I would talk about. But in a context of just, I enjoyed this beer, you might too, I do not get into it. I do think about it. I mean, I try to make sure I'm not skewing any which way. Too many of those brands are not enough. Or
well, I'm sorry to cut you off, but so I'm trying to think of like in the wine world where there's been a lot of wine writing. I would think that if someone's writing about a wine, they're going to give you a little history on the winery. So does that come up? Is it important to give a backstory on the producer who is making this? Where is this product coming from?
Yeah, I think that's fair, where the brewery is, and then potentially, a subsidiary of blankety blank, but I think, think you can leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to
and not like drill it in like this is independent, this is corporate. And to be fair, I don't think the questions were necessarily framed that way. I was just trying to make them concise and just like, is it important to talk about, where, I guess maybe who is making the beer,
or why? I mean, I remember when I was writing about Sierra Nevada's hazy little thing. It's like, how do you talk about this without talking about who Sierra Nevada is, what else is going on in beer, why they came out with this beer? Yeah, of course, but I just can't imagine diving into the whole craft versus not debate and not losing like a general consumer audience real quick.
Right. Oh, right. Not editorializing it, but maybe saying this is a Blue Moon is made by Blue Moon Brewing Company, who is owned by Coors Brewing, and kind of leaving it at that. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it before, but I think it does. I think it's a sentence that people would probably find interesting, whether or not.
I generally think it's worth noting, because a lot of people still don't know, and in this room and in the circles that all of us in this conversation tend to run with, it's a given thing, but you also have to assume that not everybody is quite as dialed in on all of these things. So it never hurts to let people know in this day and age where the source comes from.
And people might find it really cool that a beer that somebody drank and really liked was being made by an AB company or a big company. I mean, some people might think that's really neat and cool, and good for them. I'm glad I've got to try that. And I don't think it's necessarily.
And then maybe they go out to the Sandlot in Denver, and you never know where that information is going to go to. And the basis of it is that people need that information at the get-go.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate here, if we were talking about, say, let's make an analogy to like food or something, should you mention that? Like, if you were talking about like an Honest tea product, right? This tea brand, should you mention that they are owned by like Coca-Cola or Nestle or whoever? Like, is there?
I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say yes, and I would say even if you're reviewing a restaurant, if you're saying it's part of this mega restaurant group, I mean, I think, or that it's not, or even if it's part of like a small local restaurant group here in Chicago, part of the Heisler Group who brought you this place and this place and this place. I think that's
context.
It's context.
Yeah.
It's context. And it might be good context. It might be bad context, but it's just, it is context. So, I mean, if you're reviewing honesty, I mean, me personally, and I don't know if I'm the general reader, but I, across the board, like to know that stuff.
I think there is actually a good parallel in the restaurant world, because I think there was recently someone that came from McDonald's corporate and tried to open up a small, like, kind of, Shake Shacky kind of burger place. And I think any story that came out that didn't mention the fact that this dude spent a long time at McDonald's would be doing the reader a disservice.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. We're more or less out of time. We sadly, so we have to go around and give some final thoughts, some final comments. I never go first, but I'll go first this time. I'm not in my normal seat. I literally changed outfits halfway through the show. So I'll say I wanted to thank you guys for coming on. I want to thank everyone for listening. And you know what? I went first, and I'll just keep it short and sweet and weird and say that's all I have to say. Thanks to everyone generally. Carl, what do you have to say?
I think Chris deserves a lot of credit for all the work that he put in to make his college basketball team the number one college basketball team in the country this year. I know they appreciate it. I know we appreciate it. It's a lot of effort that you put in every year, and it shouldn't go unmentioned.
There's a lot that goes into not ruining, I would say jinxing.
You could wear the wrong pair
things.
of socks.
Yep.
You could say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
I could say that they're going to win accidentally as the show is ending like I did, and I had to say I had to do a lot of stuff. I had to basically walk backwards for the rest of the week just to make up for that.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. Well, thank you. Mm-hmm. Kate, anything for you?
Yeah, I want to thank you for having me. Very cool experience to do this, and just like a big hug and high fives to Chicago, which I miss dearly, and the beer there. I'm high fiving through the microphone.
Are you a Chicago native, or just enjoyed your time
here? No, I was
here?
just there for 8-ish years, so
yeah, man,
it has a special place.
Very, very cool. Matt?
Chris, I just want to say this was an interesting idea for a show, and I'm glad that I got to listen to it and be a little part of it for today's topic.
Yeah, got to keep it novel. Got to try new things. Maybe we'll do it again, and maybe we'll reverse it. We'll have a bunch of specific brewery owners and have a bunch of beer writers ask them questions and kind of grill them.
We could do that whenever we want if
That's
we really
true.
wanted to.
All right.
I want. Can I advocate for an all letters show?
Yeah, we could do that.
I'd love an all letters show.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great.
I think we have enough.
Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great point. If there was an all letters show, come on, guys. I know you guys have thought about it before. Anything at all. It's insiders at craftbeertemple.com or 3219 South Morgan Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60608. That will guarantee it. Well, almost 90% of the handwritten letters. I had a letter handed to me last week. Oh, man.
What about carrier pigeon? Where do they go?
That has never happened. I've had a typewritten letter sent in. I've had one handed to me. Oh, man, what did it say? I don't have it on me. I think it said, "What's the deal with New England IPAs?" But he just handed it to me and said, "Here's a letter."
Hey,
What is the
shorter the
deal?
better.
Yeah.
Was it cut out of individual magazine letters and like glued on a piece of like a ransom note?
Yeah,
What's
the person
the
who
deal?
handed it to me was also none other than Jerry Seinfeld. But I wanted to thank you guys, and I think are we out of time, Matt? All right, are you going to hit the outro like you hit the intro?
I've got it this
so
time.
we have 10 minutes still. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Kate. Thanks for coming on. Thanks, Carl.
Yeah.
Carl Cockers, Kate Bernat, and Matt Arata. I am Chris Quinn. This is the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I have to give you all this stuff to make sure that I'm not on Carl's hate list.
I'm going to write a really mean blog
Yes.
post about this.
Mm-hmm. We'll see you next week with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. So long.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.